Ladies and gentlemen, it has been quite a long time since I've done one of these, but considering the fact that this season is going to be more of, I guess, an investment season, um, we have, what, 4 new people, and, I'd like them to have a long-term enjoyment in Pokemon. So, my goal this season is obviously to try my best to help people because, it's enjoyable for me. And I feel like I have a lot of knowledge about Pokemon. Maybe not the most, but enough to where I can, you know, enough to where I feel like I can make an impact and help people learn the game a bit better. So that's why we're here. Pretty much from now until the end of the season, whether that's the end of the regular season or until the end of finals, I'm gonna be making a video a week on different topics about Pokemon, and gonna be a bit longer, So for me, that's probably an hour-ish in length every week. This video, as you can probably tell by the title, will be around team building and roles to look for. So I guess just team building is a general idea, and then I guess the more specific thing is roles, what roles you need on a team, all that. And then I have 2 other videos, so I guess the next 3 weeks I have videos. This week is going to be the team building one that I'm doing now. Next week, counter teaming and prepping, I guess. And then after that, some more interesting one. It's about match control. I don't know if there's any other concepts I really need to hit other than those 3. If you guys have ideas, let me know. But those are the 3 I have right now. After that, I'll have to, figure it out. But for right now, let's get on with the video. Team building. So usually, what I think you should do when you should team build is you should choose 1 to 3 mons. No more. Choose 1 to 3 mons that you want to use. So I brought up all the teams that I have off memory that I remembered. I think there's a league or 2 that I don't have. You know what? Can we pull that up? I need to see if I can pull it up really quick. It's a bad idea, but I want to see if I can pull it up really quick. This? God, going back and watching all of my Pokemon content and seeing myself with long hair it's weird. It's weird. Because it's literally only been like 5 or 6 months, but seeing myself with the long hair, God, I need that shit back. Here we go. One of the OG teams. This is from back in 2015, I want to say. Yeah. 2015. So, coming up on 10 years ago. Jesus Christ, I've been playing Pokemon for too long. This is one of the OG teams. Put that to the side for now. That's besides the point. Just wanted to pull it up because, God, I love that team. But put up all the teams that I could. There's probably If we're talking about my old school teams, like the one you just saw, those teams are lost to the nethers of time and space and internet. But since I've came back to draft with Big Juice, I think there's only one team I'm missing, and I forget what that league was called. I was in it with Tanner, but I know I had like Entei. I had Entei, Mega Aggron, Sylveon, and Sneasel. I remember that. But regardless, there's like one or two teams I'm missing, but for the most part, this is a very good, portfolio of what I have since I've come back to the draft. So let's go over it. So again, every draft, you kind of want an identity, something to build around. I say 1 to 3 because usually, sometimes it's just one mon you want to build around. Sometimes it's 2, like a pairing, which is what I try to do sometimes. I say 3 at most because 3 is what we call a core in Pokemon. I'll get to that in a second. But so for season 1 of Big Juice, I wanted to use Victini and Gyarados because water Dark and Fire Psychic pretty much cover each other pretty well. They're like opposite typings, they work pretty well. Season 2 I did a similar thing, except I did it with Dragapult and Mega Audino. That was the thought process going into that season. Dragon and Ghost and Fairy and Normal go pretty well together. Dragapult's weak to Ghost, Audino's immune. Audino doesn't really want to deal with poisons. Dragapult resists. Just naturally, they cover each other pretty well. Season 3, the idea was around Zeraora and Garchomp, and then it kind of turned into Blastoise at the end as the general idea, but really it started out as a pairing between Zeraora and Garchomp. I just thought Zeraora in Season 3, we unbanned it for the first time, and I just wanted to show people that, while yes, it's a good mon, should have never been banned. Regardless, I just wanted Zera. It's one of those mons in draft that's just very good, and I wanted it. Garchomp, all-time GOAT. Season 4, the idea was the pairing between King Gambit and Mega Gardevoir. Quad weak to fighting, get something that's quad resistant. This thing's one of if not the best physical attacker in the game. This is one of if not the best special attacker in the game. So comparing them together, typings work very well. They hit from opposite ends. They're both extreme wall breakers, and they can both set up. Swords Dance and Calm Mind respectively. One duo this season for a reason. Season 5, it was more just one mon. I just wanted to use Ogerpon really badly because this is the first season Ogerpon was allowed. So I wanted to use it really badly, and I just kind of fleshed out a team around it. Season 6, we don't talk about this season, but in general, I just really wanted to use Mega Mawile, and Hydreigon was just another mon I always wanted to use, but I always had a reason why I didn't need it. And it paired pretty well with Mega Mawile, so I said, fuck it, let's run with it. But for these two teams, I didn't really have a plan going in. Another approach you can have to a draft is kind of just feeling out the draft. Feeling out what pick you are. Like, if you're pick number 1, you should look for something very, very high up. If you are later in the draft, still look for what you want, but understand, like, let me pull up the tiering for this season. Like, if I was pick number 1, I should be looking to draft, like, Dragapult, Iron Valiant, or, like, Palafin, or Landorus Incarnate. That's what you should be looking to draft. Or, no, I'll say if you're pick number 1, you should look to draft, like, Deoxys, Dragapult, and Valiant. If you're trying to be objective about it, and, like, those are the, like, what is the best mons, at pick 1, picks 1 through 3 should be Dragapult, Iron Valiant, Deoxys speed, in my opinion, every time. No contest. In every draft, that's what it should be if they're allowed. But obviously, if you're later in the draft, you're not going to get the Dragapults of the world. So, with drafting and with team building, the first thing is you kind of have to understand, like, where you are in the draft. Like, if I'm last in the draft, I can't bank on Dragapult being open because it's not a realistic expectation. If he gets to you, you know, that's good. Draft it, but go into the draft with the expectation like this is something that's not realistic or feasible for me to build around. So it's not worth my time because it most likely won't get to me. So just deal with it. What else? So yeah, when you're team building, if there's a specific one you want to use that's very high up, just again understand that draft placement for the early rounds has a big determining factor on like what you get in like round 1 or 2. Rounds 3 and on doesn't make as much of a difference unless you're a wheel slot, then it makes a big difference. But for the most part, draft placement doesn't typically matter outside of the first 2 rounds. Let's say you're like tail end round 1. If you're tail end round 1, you should be looking to draft something like 17 points, just because, you know, a lot of people are going to be drafting the 18-point mons because they're considered the best. So like, there's 10 people, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 18-point mons. I would assume all of them except for maybe like one or obviously Macargo is, you know, but I would assume all of them except for like 1 or 2 is going to be gone towards like the end of round 1. So in my opinion, there's still great mons here. They're just maybe not considered as strong by the people that made tier list. So or maybe they're just not as strong in general. So like if I was towards the tail end of round 1, you know, I'd be like, ooh, Megalopunny's up. That's a really good mon in draft. Scissors up. Meowscarada, Coco, and Torn are 2 of the best mons in Draft League ever. Same with Garchomp. Great Tusk is never bad. Like, these are mons where at the tail end of round 1, you can make, alright, I can get these pretty comfortably because everyone's going to get these while they can. So I can start building out, like, a more well-rounded team that maybe not as expensive as 18, you know what I'm saying? So, for these 2 teams, that's kind of what I did. I kind of just felt out the draft. This one, I kind of knew I wanted Cat, but other than that, really didn't have a plan. For this one especially, I wanted the draft with no expectations. I think I was 3rd or 4th in the draft out of like 10 to 12. So it wasn't that big of a draft pool, but you know, the draft was kind of weird. There was 4 draft pools for the same league, so it was like 10 people or 12 people per pool. All that jazz. But regardless, Chin-Pao was open around like my 3rd or 4th pick, so I grabbed it. Great Tusk was open, so I grabbed it. And Gren, placement wise, I grabbed Gren like pretty late in the draft. Like, I think after I got these 2, I went into like Jirachi and Amorous, and then into my Terra Captains like Jolteon, Mismagius, and Appleton. But I didn't get Gren till I think the second to last round of the draft because Gren was just there and I had the points. I was like, fuck it, grab me Gren. So with this draft, I kind of just went into it and I built a pretty fucking solid team. Like, this is one of my favorite teams I've ever used. And yeah. So when team building or planning for a draft, understand your draft placement. And you can either go in with a hard plan, like I have with Big Juice traditionally, or you can go in with like a soft plan, just like, I want Cat, and then after that, fuck it, we ball. Or you can go with no plan at all, and you can just grab what you think is good and works with the other mons you've drafted. Like I drafted Chin-Pao. What works well with Chin-Pao? Something that can get rid of rocks? Great Tusk. I need nice resist. Because these 2 are weak to ice, I can grab Appleton. Oh, he's also quad weak? Make him a Terra Cap. So, like, there's a lot of things that you can work with that, like, obviously, if you're new, I wouldn't recommend just freeballing a draft because it is pretty hard, especially with Big Juice drafts, since we do it all in one go. You're kind of, like, time crunched compared to the other drafts where, like, they take place over days, where it's a lot easier to do that. But if you want to freeball it, you can. It's just your team might not be as good. But regardless, all drafts, including ours, have a grace period. Grace period meaning 24 hours from the end of the draft till 24 hours after. You can make infinite transactions as much as you want, yada yada yada. Whatever. We'll get more into that later. But big picture, you can either build around a core, one mon, or just freeball the draft. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. I'm just yap like I usually do. But the biggest thing is understanding cores. Now, what is a core in Pokemon? Now, cores in Pokemon, I would say there's two major ones, and then there's like one, like, there's like a mini, like another, there's other like mini cores that you can do, but there's two main ones: Fire, Water, Grass, and Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Look at all my teams. These are all typings that I have: Fire, Water, Grass, Fairy, Steel, and one, and my dragon's there. Fire, Water, Grass, Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Here, I got my Water and my Steel in one, which we'll get into a little bit later with roll compression and typing compression, but Empoleon worked with both cores pretty well. Fire, Water, Grass, Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Fire, Water, Grass, Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Fire, Water, or you can do Fire, Water, and Grass. Then Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Fire, Water, Grass. Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Fire, Water, Grass. Fire, Water, Grass. Fairy, Steel. Oh, I actually had no dragon on this team. Wow. I just noticed that. So, no dragon, but Fairy, Steel, which, in my opinion, are the two more important typings in having a dragon, because they do way more for a team than dragon does. And then you have the, where's my fire? Well, I don't have fire either. Wow. How well this team performed, okay. I mean, I have the two waters and a grass, but okay. I mean, this team was fire regardless, but this team didn't follow a more traditional thing. But you can see with all the other teams, cover that. Some of the other, like, more niche cores, I would say, is like Ghost, Normal, Dark is like a core. And then like Fighting, Psychic, Ghost, or Dark, like those typings all work pretty well together. But for the most part, it's Fire, Water, Grass, Fairy, Steel, Dragon. Those are the two most important cores because they cover like 90%, if not all, the typings in the game with those 6 typings. Not to mention just the 3 typings in general. Fire, Water, Grass, they pretty much cover everything except for Dragon in that case. And Fairy, Steel, Dragon, they pretty much cover everything. Everything that you need. Fairy, Steel, Dragon, in my opinion, is number 1, the most important core that you need. Dragon isn't the most important. Reasoning being, Dragon's only super effective against Dragon. Obviously, dragons in general typically have a higher base stat total than other Pokemon, so that just means they're inherently stronger and they'll do more damage and they just hit harder. That's why they are only super effective. That's why Dragon is only super effective against Dragon. But if you're looking for like a more team-wide thing, Fairy and Steel just cover more because Fairies counter Dragons and they beat them. And they're just Moonblast is a broken move. And then Steels, there's just like 90% of the typings in the game, and they typically come with like other utility moves like rocks or spikes. So Steels are very, very valuable. So yeah, those are like the cores. Within the core, you kind of want like type synergy. So like here, we'll go with this one. Fernape is a firefighting type, so that means he doesn't like water types. Empoleon can cover that. Quad resist. And Fernape is also a fighting type, so he doesn't like flying or psychic types. Empoleon's steel typing covers that pretty well. Now, the one weakness of this core is that fire and steel are both weak to ground, but Shaman can cover that both with its grass typing. Obviously, if you just have one Mon as like the backbone, that can be tough at times. So I also had a flying type and landers. So this is a really good core. I've seen a lot of people draft this specific core a lot in drafts: Empoleon, Landers, Therian, and Shaman. I think it's a very, very strong core. It just defensively, it's very hard to break, and they all hit pretty hard neutrally. So this is a core I like a lot, even though it's not like a traditional core. I think Landers, Empoleon, Shaman is very, like, it's a proven. I think A-Drive had it, and I think he won a championship with it. I could be wrong, but I know he definitely had it back in the what was A-Drive's league called? Wow. It's been so long since I've done anything draft related, I've completely forgot. I gotta do this for my own, like, knowledge now. A-Drive. No, it's not GBA. What the fuck? What was his other team called? A-Drive. Menace. Go. Not the NPA. What was his league called, bro? Yeah, I'm about to tweak. I'm actually about to tweak. NPA. UBL. Dude, what the fuck was that league called? Alright, let's just click on one so we can figure it out. Dude, I'm about to tweak. I know this is, like, not important even remotely, but, like, my own curiosity at this point, I need to figure it out. Alright, let's go back 7 years ago. We're doing it. We're doing it. Skip this part of the video if you want, but this is how I make my videos. 2 years back. Yeah, the fact that Scarlet and Violet's been out for 2 years now is insane. What the fuck was it called? The WBA? World Battle Association? No, that was a different league. What was that league called, bro? I'm about to lose my mind. I saw Draft League. WBE. Oh, I knew it. I knew it. Regardless. Just wasted like 2 minutes of my night for no reason. But, regardless. Within the cores, you kind of want the typings to work well with each other. I talked about this earlier. Dragapult, Audino, Ghost immunity for Dragapult's big. Ghost resisting poison for this is big. Dragapult has fire coverage for steel types that Audino doesn't want to deal with necessarily. Fighting types are neutral against Audino, which Audino can beat because it's very type of Dazzling Gleam, but in general, having an immunity for fighting types is pretty big. I guess we'll go here. Where's my fire, water, grass? Fire. These don't really pair that well together. I mean, Roserade as a grass type is not the greatest. Well, as a grass type, it's like fine, but like it's a grass type that doesn't resist ground, which is a pretty like, because there's only 2 things in the game that resist ground. It's flying types that are immune and grass types. And when your grass type still takes neutral damage from ground moves, that's a pretty big deal. Now, in Roserade's case, it's pretty offensive, so it can kill grounds very, very easily and outspeed most of them with base 90. So in Roserade's case, it's kind of fine. But if you're looking for a defensive grass type, Roserade Especially yes, physically no. Um, but you get the idea. Like, this was a more concrete idea where, like, within the core, you want to try to make the typings mesh as well as you possibly can. And also on top of this, Infernape is traditionally more offensive. Empoleon can be offensive, but traditionally defensive. And Shaman is kind of the same as Empoleon, where it's traditionally defensive, but it can be offensive. So just between this core, they cover each other extremely well. There's a clear offensive threat, but then you have two kind of like wild cards where it's like they can be offensive, they can be defensive. It creates a lot of mind game and prep, and just to shut down these three mons in general can be pretty hard at times. So yeah, that was probably the best example I'm gonna get out of that. This another the next most important thing outside of cores is going to be hazards and hazard removal. Now, the first two seasons I played, I really didn't focus on hazards too much. Season 1, the reason Florges and Bombay here is because I traded Florges away for Bombay, but that was like super last second. Regardless, I got Sticky Webs because I realized my team was slow outside of Jolteon. So Sticky Webs helped alleviate the speed issue, which in your draft we'll get to later with speed tiers. But speed tiers are probably the most important thing outside of like... I would say speed tiers are probably the most important thing when it comes to making a team, but I will cover that a bit later. But with hazards and hazards removal, that's, if not more important than speed tiers, I would say hazards and hazards removal is probably the most important, but let's get to it. I would say at minimum, this is what I would say for minimums. You need at least, so in Pokemon, 4 hazards. Stealth Rocks, Spikes, Toxic Spikes, Sticky Webs. I would say if you want a good team that is capable of doing whatever you kind of want it to do, you need 3 of the 4 hazards. Now, one that is non-negotiable is Stealth Rocks. You need Stealth Rocks. If you don't have rocks on your team, you're not going to win a game. It's just that simple. Rocks are too important. They hit everything. If you don't have rocks, your team is ass. But, so outside of rocks, you need 2 of the 3 others. Whether that's Spikes and Webs, Toxic Spikes and Webs, Spikes and T-Spikes. You gotta choose what you want to play around. For me, I'm not the biggest Sticky Web guy. I've drafted it a couple times. I had Rabombe Season 1. I had Araquanid Season 4. That was kind of it. Like, I'm not a big Sticky Web guy personally, but I know Sticky Webs is big for a lot of people. I know Chris is big on Sticky Webs. I know Tabs pretty much only drafts Sticky Webs. It's kind of about Draft League as well. Another side tangent is kind of like identity, figuring out how you like to play and drafting around that, like what mons facilitate that. But obviously that comes with time and experience and figuring it out and using a lot of different mons and playing against a lot of different mons. But kind of figuring out how you want to play. So for me, first 2 seasons I really didn't focus on hazards too much. I kind of just had rocks, and that was it. Moving into Season 3, though, was a very big deal for me personally as a player because I drafted Rosary because I was very... Also, another reason I wanted to draft Garchomp is because that was first gen... Going into Gen 9, he just recently got Spikes. So, I made a very intentional decision in Season 3. I want Spikes because first 2 seasons I didn't have them. I want Toxic Spikes because, again, first 2 seasons I didn't have them. So... I knew this is what I wanted. I wanted to play around it as much as possible to ingrain it into my mind. And as you can see moving forward, every team I have has Spikes on it or Toxic. Like, moving forward, I can't have a team without Rock, Spikes, and Toxic Spikes. It's just in my blood now. It's what I need. I need it. UNPL, I didn't have Spikes, but I had Toxic Spikes and Rocks. But in this, I had Toxic Spikes, Spikes, Toxic Spikes, Spikes, Rocks, Rocks, Toxic Spikes, Spikes, Rocks, 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 Spikes, 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 Rocks, toxic spikes, rocks. Like, Season 3 was a very big deal for me, and Rose Raid kind of enforced that into my mind. Like me now, pre-season 3 Big Juice, and like even before, like way back in the day, like I really didn't play around hazards that much. It wasn't something I really cared to play around. It was one of those things, like even here with this team, you can kind of see, like, I just had rocks on this team. Like I had Excadrill. You might have had rocks then. I'm not entirely sure. And I just had Excadrill and Miltank for my rockers. Like I did not prioritize rocks at all pre-season 3 Big Juice. But I knew if I wanted to, I guess, level up my game, I kind of had to start being more conscious about it and like intentionally trying to do those things. And ever since then, it's made me a completely different player. It's just something that I always look for in a draft now. I love spikes. I love toxic spikes. Hazard stacking is just something that I personally like doing now. Obviously, if you lean too much into it, it can be very easily like prepped against and countered. But in prep, it's very hard to be like, alright, are they going to bring toxic spikes this game? Are they going to bring spikes? Are they just going to bring rocks? Are they going to bring no hazards at all? Like, these are all things you have to consider in prep. But if you only have like one hazard, like let's say you just had rocks, it's like, alright, we either don't care about rocks, or we care about them, but that's the only hazard we got to worry about. In prep, you want to have as many you want to have as much on your side stacked against the other person. So like, by having the threat of hazards on multiple ends, it's like, oh shit, like, how are they going to approach this game? Like, if you just look at this team, who's going to have rocks? Is it going to be Miltank? Is it going to be Garchomp? Is it going to be Bronzong? Who's going to have spikes? Well, who's going to have spikes? Is it going to be Rose Raid or Garchomp? Who's going to have toxic spikes? Is it going to be a Weezing, or is it going to be Rose Raid? Is Rose Raid going to be spiking all game and being the hazard setter for the whole team? Is it going to be offensive? Is Garchomp going to be more defensive with rock spikes, or is it going to be offensive with Sword Stance Scale Shot? Weezing, is it going to try to burn anything with Will-O-Wisp and status with toxic, or is it going to set up toxic spikes and kind of stall me out with Pain Split? Like, these are all things you kind of have to think. In Glamora, is this going to be offensive with, like, Meteor Beam, Power Herb, and Specs? Or is this going to be, like, a standard lead with, like, Focus Sash with Stealth Rocks, Toxic Spikes? Like, making people think about hazards is just another way to give yourself the mental edge in prep. And also, Spikes is just very important in general, because I'll pull up the damage calc. Damage calc. Damn, I haven't played Pokemon so long, when I type up damage, it doesn't come up first anymore. That's depressing. But let's just say Selgort, what's a grounded psychic type? Deoxys. Deoxys defense. So let's say we're choice specs, just for sake of argument's sakes. Alright, so like right here, this is a perfect calc. Right here, we do 87 to 103% as a choice specs to Selgor into Deoxys defense. We don't kill it. Now, if we got a layer of spikes up... Oh, no, I think I did it wrong. Did I? Why isn't oh, because these boots. So like right here, you see, we only have an 18% chance of killing Deoxys with Bug Buzz, even with Choice Specs Modest. Unlucky. We get one layer of spikes up, it's guaranteed kill. Rocks, same thing in this case, because Deoxys typing is neutral, so they'll both do 12%, but if we get a layer of rocks up, it now kills if he doesn't have boots. So as you can see, hazards can turn damage calcs in your favor. It can turn 2 shots into 1 shots, 3 shots into 2 shots. Like, it makes a very big deal. Also, threat of hazards forces items like boots. So, and if a mon has boots, they're not going to be as offensive or as sustainable as they traditionally are with like something like leftovers, like a choice item for offense. So, hazards, very important. Again, I would say minimum, you need 3 of the 4 hazard types on your team. Rocks is non-negotiable, so I guess technically 2 of the 3 remaining you need. Rocks, I would say you need at least 2 rock setters on your team minimum. 2 months that can get them up. 1 should be a defensive mon. Should be. Because like right here, we'll go with this. We'll go with my... Yeah, we'll go with my Season 3 team. So like, Garchomp, he can set rocks, but does he want to set rocks? Not all the time. Because especially this season, he's my Terra Captain. So like, if he's going to be my Terra Captain, I'm not setting rocks to him that often. It's nice to have the option, but that's not his role on the team. Like, his role is not setting rocks. Maybe like 1 or 2 games out of the season, but for the most part, I want him to be the offensive threat. So even though he has rocks, are we utilizing it? No, not really. So we had Miltank, who's very good at setting rocks. It's what Miltank wants to do a lot of the time, but on the off chance we don't want Miltank to do it, we have Bronzong. So here, even though we have 3 rock setters, it's really just 2. It's Miltank and Bronzong, and I can kind of ping-pong responsibilities back and forth each week. Like, alright, if I want rocks, I can make Bronzong. Ooh, I want Bronzong to do this. Let's bring Miltank just so we can get rocks up. Here, I have Infernape, Kecleon, Landorus, and Empoleon. All 4 can set rocks. This is perfect. You don't know where the rocks are coming from. Infernape, traditionally not a rock setter. Role on the team wasn't to get rocks up. So realistically, it's just 3. You gotta anticipate which of those 3 mons. Number 1, which I'm bringing. And 2, if I bring a multiple, who's gonna have the rocks? So this is very important. In removal, like rocks, I would say you need a minimum of 2 removers, preferably spinners. His Rapid Spin is the best form of removal in the game, but Defog is also good. Reason why Rapid Spin is better than Defog is because you get rid of the enemy's hazards, but you don't get rid of your own. With Defog, you kind of clear the whole field, so it just brings everything back to neutral, which can suck at times. Because a lot of the times it's like, ooh, I want my hazards up, but they're just down. So when you defog, it just kind of feels bad. But obviously, because of that, Rapid Spin is a normal type move. So if they have a ghost type, he can bite you in the ass. Which I guess segues into the next part. You always want a ghost type. Ghost types are massively important. Because they block Rapid Spin. It's that simple. Rapid Spin is that broken to the point where having a ghost type will make your draft better. In my opinion, I think you need a ghost type, and on top of that, I think you need a ghost resist. So, ghost resist in the game is only 2, which is why ghost types are so strong, is dark types and normal types are immune. So realistically, it's just 1 type resist and 1 immunes, but you should at least have a dark or a normal, or you need at least 1. Minimum 1, and by having a ghost, you can pressure other ghosts. So like, let's go, like Spectrier, 17 points. You pull up Spectrier on the team thing, it's like, why the fuck is this mon here? Like, what makes this mon so good? He gets no, let's look at his moves. Category, he gets Dark Pulse, Shadow Ball. His coverage is awful, but it doesn't matter because Spectrier's attack is so high and he's so fast that if you kill the Dark or the Ghost type, he's just gonna kill everything with Shadow Ball. That's what makes Spectrier so broken in draft, is because usually there's only 1 or 2 mons that can deal with it on a team, if that. And the second you get through those mons, your Ghost type kind of cooks. Another thing that you can do with ghost types, so I guess I'll pull up Spectrier again, is another thing that makes hero types very, very strong in draft is Hex. What Hex does is it's weaker than Shadow Ball. It's 65 compared to 80, but if the target is status, it doubles, so it goes up to, what, 130? So what you'll see sometimes on teams is they'll either have a mon that loves to spread status. I guess go back to Weezing. Weezing is a very good mon if you want like a hex spammer on your team, because not only does he want to will-o-wisp things and toxic things, he can also set up like for the whole team by setting up toxic spikes. Like Weezing is a good example of like if you want a ghost type, you can also have a ghost type with something with toxic spikes. That way, that's another thing you have to worry about in prep. Are they gonna hex spam me? So that's kind of that for ghost types. Just they're very strong. They can counter rapid spin, which is very big. Because even if like, let's put it like this. Even if the enemy, I think there's a game in season 4 I have. I don't know if there's replays. Showdown. I forget if I still have it up. I mean, it was on my profile a long time ago, so if it's still there, I'd be impressed. But I know I have an example of it somewhere. I just have to scroll down far enough. Phase Gen 7, Gen 8. God, I forget who the fuck goes against. It was season 4, so I think we're cooked. Yeah, but I think there's a game in season 4 where I brought Miss Magius just so I could rapid spin block, and while they predicted me and they killed me with knockoff, obviously that sucks because I lost them on for no reason, but the idea is as long as I force them not to click rapid spin, I keep the hazards up, I'm applying pressure. Like, that's something we'll get into, I guess, when I VOD review a bit more, but ghost types have a lot of functionality. Offensively, they're very strong, but defensively, they're not the greatest defensively, but, like, what they can offer with, like, rapid spin block and stuff like that, it's very good. So, I would recommend getting a ghost type, and if you don't have one, you need a resist, whether it's a dark or a normal or getting one of both. Invest into it, because ghost types are very, very powerful in draft. Another thing, like ghost, is ground. Ground is very strong, and from what I've noticed in my time playing Draft League, is I do best when I draft a very strong ground type. So if you'll look through my teams and my success, we'll go over it. This team, I didn't even have a ground type this team. Yeah, this team was awful. This team was really bad, but it's fun. This team, I had a Landorus, brought me to the finals. This team, Garchomp, won. Season 4, Mudsdale. For the points he is, it's very good value and very strong, but comparatively to the other two, when I played in Season 4, I did notice a lack of a ground type, because Mudsdale isn't like an every game bring compared to Landorus and Garchomp. So Season 4, that's when I definitely noticed, like, wow, not having a high tier ground type, like, it's very noticeable to me. This season, Nidoqueen, kind of same thing as Mudsdale, but a slightly better. Nidoqueen was, like, perfect for me. I loved it. This season, don't talk about it. This with Clodsire, pretty good ground type. Brought it a lot. Did me pretty well. Again, Great Tusk, like Garchomp and Landorus, like, I've noticed as a player, when I draft a high tier ground type, I do best. It's just something I'm very comfortable with, because again, you just spam Earthquake, or I guess in Great Tusk's case, you spam Headlong Rush, and like, there's only two things: grass and flying. And most ground types have Stone Edge or Rock coverage for flying, so really the only counter to ground types is grass types. That's very easily covered with the rest of your moves. And in Landorus' case, he has U-turn, so you can just U-turn out on those mounts. Garchomp, if you really need it, has Flamethrower and Fire Blast. Great Tusk, if you really need it, has Ice Spinner. So, like, that's what makes these ground types better than the other ones. And even Nidoqueen, like, oh, you want to switch into your flying type? Ice Beam. You want to switch into your grass type? I'm a poison type, Sludge Wave, to kill you. So, like, these mons are very, very strong. Again, it's very hard to beat a good ground type, and they're very good. Another reason being why grounds are good is because rocks, like 90%, if not all ground types, get access to Stealth Rocks, or spikes. A lot of them get access to spikes as well. So, gives you an option for hazards. And on top of that, ground is immune to electric, which we'll get to right after this, but electric types, and more specifically fast electric types, are a very, very important thing in draft. So let's go over my teams. Fast electric types: Jolteon, base 130, Raikou, base 115, Aurora, 143. Rotom is a bit slower, but we'll get to that in a second. Mega Manectric, 135. Voltund, 121. Rotom, again, we'll get to that. Jolteon, drafted him again. Fast electrics are very good because offensively electric is very good. They only have like what, 3 things? Or I guess 4. Electric or resist electric, but the other ones that are important is grass, dragon, and ground. Which grass, dragon, and ground all get killed by an ice type, and since hidden power is allowed in this league, a lot of, especially the older guys, have access to hidden power ice, which kind of makes fast electrics very strong because they're faster than everything and they can kill everything. You know, really the prediction is, if I go into my ground type, am I predicting are they going to predict that and go hidden power ice, or are they just going to click the safe move and click the electric move and I beat it? So electric types are very strong, and again with Volt Switch, which we'll get to a bit later, pivoting, very, very important draft. Being able to hit something and reposition at the same time is very strong, and being able to do that before them, again, just a very, very good thing. I said we'd talk about it, so I guess we'll talk about it now. So like with the Rotoms, they're not as fast as the other ones, but base 86 is kind of like a good zone where like you're just faster than like the walls, but you're slower than kind of like anything like offensive. But another thing that's like, I said fast pivoting is very good, but another thing that's very good is slow pivoting. So like something like Electros, he's base 50, but because of how bulky he is, he can eat the hit, and then he can get out, and then that way the thing you're bringing out isn't taking it. So like with something like Jolteon, since you're faster, while you're getting the hit off first, and that's good, in some scenarios you don't actually want that because you're switching a mon in to take damage, and if that mon can't take the damage, that can be a problem. But something like Electros, you're trading the speed for getting a slow pivot, which is good. Another example of a good slow pivoter is Slowking. You can take the hit, you can chill your reception out. That way you take the hit, you pivot out, and with Slowking's case, you have Regenerator, so not only are you taking the hit and you're pivoting out for something for free, but you also heal off some of the damage with the Regenerator. Another very good slow pivoter is Deoxys Defense. You can take the hit and you can just teleport out, and there's just not. And Deoxys is faster, teleport, negative priority move. So in Deoxys' case, kind of the same thing as Slowking, since you just don't have Regenerator. So you kind of want a good combination of fast and quick pivots. A lot of the good offensive mons have access to U-turn. So like something like Victini or Dragapult and Fernape. Like this team specifically, I built a lot around pivoting. So you can see I have Dragapult with U-turn and Fernape with U-turn. Landers with U-turn. This had flip turn. This had volt switch. Like with this team's pivoting was absolutely disgusting. This team, flip turn, U-turn, or volt switch. Just a lot of pivoting. A lot of pivoting. You want it. It's very good. You get the idea. And you want a combination of both fast and slow. Kind of figure out what you like, what you don't like. It's something you just kind of figure out with time. What do we got next? What are some other very core things here? I guess I'll just bring... I guess we'll... Okay, so I'd say there's like 2 more important types. We went over ghost types, we went over grounds, we went over electrics. There's like 2 more, and then we can move on to some other stuff. I would say grounded poison and a bulky water type. The reason why you want a grounded poison type is because poison types, if they're grounded, They absorb toxic spikes automatically, so you don't have to rapid spin them, which is insane value. Because instead of wasting a turn to get rid of something and also getting poisoned by it, you just immune it entirely, and it just kind of dissuades the whole purpose of toxic spikes, because they can just absorb them. Is it even worth bringing? So grounded poison type is very important. And bulky waters are pretty important because water is the best defensive typing. You can argue fairy as well, but I like water a lot. It's very good offensively and defensively. Just bulky waters in general are hard to kill. They're only weak to two things, which is electric and grass. A good grass type can cover that. A good steel type can cover that. A good dragon type even can cover that. Like, it's a very easy thing to cover when you're making a team, so having a bulky water is good. If you look at my teams, Gyarados is a bulky water, but he also hits super hard. And Empoleon, kind of the same thing, but doesn't hit as hard. Mega Blastoise is probably the best example of this. Just ungodly bulk paired with the damage of a nuclear missile, just insane. Araquanid, another great example with Blastoise, just impossible to kill, paired with the ability to just one-shot everything. Samurott, not as bulky as the others, but makes up for it with some damage. Just very, very good to have a bulky water type. It's just very hard to kill them. Alright, that out of the way. Talked about pivoting. Talked about all that. Let's talk about some more specific roles. I've talked about types, and I guess in nature they are kind of roles on a team, but let's talk about more role specific. So one that's kind of fallen out of favor in Gen 9, but still worth mentioning, is clerics. This can be something with Heal Bell. So Florges is a very good cleric. Gets access to aromatherapy and Heal Bell. I don't think it's Heal Bell, gets aromatherapy, which is essentially the same thing, which removes all status for your whole team, which is very good. Also gets access to Wish, and being able to have a very defensive mon to wish health back up is very good. As you can see with my earlier days, Florges and Maldino, it's something I used to rely on a lot, having a Wish Passer, because it's just something I liked. Wish Passing is also a form of pivoting, because you can have your defensive mon eat the hit, and then wish something else out. Not only you bring it out, not only you bring something out, but you're also healing it. So as long as it's not taking too much damage, you essentially get a free switch in and heal them at the same time. It's very strong. It's something that I kind of do. Not as much anymore, but I used to do it a lot. So that's kind of clerics, just things with Heal Bell, aromatherapy, wish, stuff like that. That's typically a cleric in Pokemon. Mons with good utility moves. So Mons that the three most important IMO being Knockoff, Taunt, and Encore. Now, pretty much most good Pokemon in the game, offensive or defensive, will have Knockoff. Question being, do they want to click it? So Empoleon gets access to Knockoff, maybe doesn't want it all the time. Infernape recently got access to Knockoff, maybe doesn't want to click it all the time, but something like Sableye and Landers, they're clicking Knockoff all the damn time. Audino is clicking Knockoff all the damn time. This team didn't really have a good Knockoff user besides Liepard. Didn't come to a game. We're not counting that game versus Chris. But Zeraora was really my only Knockoff user, but that was one of the weak points of this team, is I didn't really have a good way to remove items. This team, King Gamut had Knockoff, which is the best Knockoff user in the game. So this team, Samurott, Ogerpon, Deoxys, all having access to Knockoff. Having Mons, whether they're defensive or offensive, having I would say at least one strong Knockoff user where it's this is a Mon you can rely on to click Knockoff every game. Having that one Mon is very, very strong. Taunt, probably, I would say one of the top best moves in the game, especially in Gen 9, because it is such an offensive meta. Being able to taunt things from setting up on you is very good. Again, whether it's offensive or defensive. Typically, taunt you want on more of like an offensive mon or like a mon with high speed. That way you can like, rather than like having like a Gyarados Dragonance on you and then you taunt it, you can taunt it and then prevent the setup. So like, typically with taunt, you kind of want it on faster mons or mons with Prankster. But yeah, taunt, very strong move. And again, probably, in my opinion, the most broken move to cover is Encore. That way, even if they do set up by clicking Dragon Dance, you can just Encore them into it, and now they're forced to switch out because for the next 3 turns they can't do anything besides click that move that's not going to do anything. Another just strong thing about Encore is like if they select a move that doesn't really hit you that hard, you can Encore them into it, and then Encore just forces a lot of switching, forces a lot of disruption in a team. Having like one good Encore user on a team is highly suggested. Again, having all these things on one team is just not realistic, but for a good team, you kind of want a good mix of a majority of these. It's very hard to do, but that's what separates bad players from the good players. What else we got here? Sweepers and wall breakers. That's a big thing that people get kind of confused in Pokemon, that they confuse a wall breaker for a sweeper. So let's go over it. What defines a wall breaker? In my opinion, a wall breaker is something with a very high attack stat that does not require setup to kill things. Best examples: King Gambit, Mega Gardevoir. Their attack stats are extremely high to the point where, especially with their abilities boosting their attacks, they do not require setup to one-shot things, and that includes tanks. Even your bulkiest, specially defensive mon probably doesn't want to eat a Hyper Voice from Mega Gardevoir. That's just how it is. They just don't want to do it. Now, where it becomes confusing is that there's a lot of mons where they can do both, like Garchomp. He's a wall breaker, but he can also be a sweeper. What defines a sweeper is a mon that can use a setup move to then win the game. So traditionally, what you can do, Blastoise, another good example of a sweeper, wall breaker, and a good defensive mon. Defensively, very hard to kill. Offensively, can be offensive with rapid. Just alone rapid spin, just getting +1 speed, it can do it a lot of times. But even then, Mega Blastoise has Shell Smash, which most leagues ban it, but we allow it in Big Juice for some reason. I don't know why, but we do. If you get off a Shell Smash with Mega Blastoise, you're probably just going to win the game. Talk to Croc about it. He knows all about it. But Blastoise also can just wall break, just because his attack stat is so high with Mega Launcher that he doesn't really need to set up. He can break the walls so that something else can sweep later. So like Garchomp, let's just say in a game, Blastoise is my breaker. Let's go with Roserade. Roserade's another good breaker. Let's do National Dex. Roserade's another good breaker because it has a very high attack, not very high, but it has a good attack stat. So like I could slap like a Choice Specs on this, and let's say Roserade kills like the 1 or 2 things that Garchomp needs to kill everything. Roserade and Blastoise can take care of what Garchomp can't. Garchomp comes in, sweeps a team. Sometimes it's not even really required to click a setup move like Swords Dance or Scale Shot in Garchomp's case, because if your wall breakers can, even if they don't kill the walls that block Garchomp, they can weaken them to the point where Garchomp can take care of it. The wall breakers have done their job. So wall breakers just want to get things low, or best case scenario, they take care of the walls completely. But again, name being, they weaken the walls to a point where something can take your sweepers, your offensive mons, take care of it later. Cinderace isn't typically considered a sweeper. He's more of like a pivoter / utility mon, but because of his high speed, if everything is taken care of, you can just click Pyro Ball and kill everything late game. So I would consider Cinderace in a way a sweeper, even though he really doesn't have setup moves outside of like Bulk Up, which bulk up Cinderace isn't really the most common thing in the world, but Sweeper is kind of based on speed and setup moves, where Wall Breakers are more just like, my base number is so much higher than yours that I can just destroy you. Another good example of this is Garchomp, or Mega Gyarados. Mega Gyarados is a great, fantastic Wall Breaker, but he's also a setup sweeper, which people can confuse at times. With Victini, he's not a sweeper. Unless he's like Scarf, he's really not a sweeper. He's a great wall breaker because you just click V create on everything, you just obliterate the entire team. Like, there's a nuance to it and people get confused a lot, but you want maybe like 1 or 2 wall breakers on the team, like 1 to 2 sweepers, to the point where like you want them to be able to like work together, obviously. So like, if like what can Garchomp take care of? He doesn't necessarily want to deal with ice types. He doesn't necessarily want to deal with fairies. Roserade can deal with the fairies. And offensively, I have Magmortar to deal with ices. Blastoise can deal with ices as long as they don't freeze dry. Defensively, I brought like those sweepers and wall breakers don't always have to work together, but they typically want to be able to like, you know, like, you don't want to have like 2 fire types that are both, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. But you want to like a mix of special attacking and physical attack. It's like the reason why my season 4 team was so good is I had a very strong special attacker and a very strong physical attacker. So like when you're prepping against this, it's like, alright, am I investing in defense to stop King Gambit? Ooh, but if I do that, then Gardevoir is more open to just kill everything. So like, it's mind games, it's all that. You want like a good mix of physical and special attackers, but especially when you're making a team with like wall breakers and sweepers. You want to try to make sure they work together, and if they don't, it's not the end of the world, but you need to make sure you cover that some other way with utility or defensive. I already talked about pivoting a little bit earlier. I talked about synergy. I guess really the last 2 important things is like priority. Again, this is something that I don't really factor in as much as I should. Priority is just something I don't think about when I'm making a team a lot of the times. I do have it occasionally, but it's not really the biggest factor for me. It's like here, I had Mach Punch. Here, Mach Punch, Vacuum Wave, Shadow Sneak, Mach Punch, Prankster. So I guess on this team I had a lot of priority. Here, I had Prankster, 2 Prankster Mons, 1, and then I had Aqua Jet. Sucker Punch, so like 2 Sucker Punch users. So like, priority isn't the end of the world, but priority is good, just because at the end of the day, if you can, like, a very good priority mon that abuses priority very well. Dragonite. I guess we'll do normal type. What's like a good normal type? With that's alright. So what do we? So like, let's just do Dragonite. So like, Dragonite has extreme speed, which is a very strong priority move. So if you can just weaken the whole team and then bring Dragonite out, it doesn't matter if the mons are necessarily faster than you. You can just kill everything with extreme speed. Another good priority mon is Lycanroc, because you just click Accel Rock, and it doesn't matter if they're faster than you. If they don't have a priority move to beat your priority, you just kill everything with Accel Rock late game. So like, priority is very good because it can negate speed advantages that teams can have over each other. And again, it's very good for cleaning up games. It's just something you got to worry about. And I guess the last thing I'll talk about before this video gets any longer is roll compression. Kind of just drafting mons that can do like a little bit of everything. Not every mon's gonna be able to do it, and that's fine, and it's not supposed to, but finding mons that can do multiple things at the same time is valuable, especially in draft. Best mon, in my opinion, for roll compression is Great Tusk. Offensively, super hard to deal with. Defensively, super hard to deal with. Utility, super annoying. has knockoff, rapid spin. Just Great Tusk just offers everything you could possibly want in a Pokemon, and he's like the poster boy for roll compression. Like he does it all. What else we got around here for roll compression? Deoxys is another good roll compression mon. Can be the utility mon with like knockoff, taunt, spikes, hazards, stealth rocks. Can be offensive with like specs, psycho boost. It can be defensive with like Rocky Helmet recover sets. Another good mon with the roll compression is Nidoqueen. Can be defensive with Black Sludge. Can get up rocks, toxic spikes. Can be offensive with Life Orb Pure Force. It does a lot of different things that you might not be able to really handle. A mon that's not really roll compressed is Mega Gardevoir. It's like compared to like compressing multiple rolls like a Great Tusk, Gardevoir is pretty much just does one thing: Hyper Voice. Can you deal with it? Most teams can't, and that's what makes Gardevoir good. It's like it's a one-trick pony in a sense, but it doesn't matter. It's just that it does something that other mons just can't do. So roll compression is a very important thing. I didn't go like too in depth about it, but idea being finding a mon that does a lot for a team is good. Another mon I kind of highlighted earlier with that is Empoleon. It covers a lot. It was the glue to my Fairy Steel Dragon and my Fire Water Grass core. And it gave me a good rocker, momentum. It gave me a lot. Like, Empoleon for this team was a very good mon because it compressed a lot of rolls into one Pokemon that I needed. Same with Roserade. Gave me my grass type, my hazard setter, because going into the season I didn't have Weezing initially, so like Roserade was like my hazards, my grass type, my poison type. Like, it compressed a lot of rolls into one mon that I needed. So it's kind of the idea of the roll compression. Again, this video's very long, so probably gonna end it here, but if there's anything I didn't explain too well, because I guess at the end I kind of did start rushing it a bit, but I didn't explain anything as well as I should have. You can always ask me. Yeah, it's kind of everything for like team building and roles. Again, pick like 1 to 3 mons to build around, whether it's a core you want to build around or just like one mon. Figure it out. Try to build around it. Speed tiers I did not hit on, so let me hit on speed tiers. So speed tier is very important because you want to have fast mons, obviously, because if you attack first, it's very good. But you want to have slow mons, because again, pivoting slowly is very good. Sometimes you want to go last so you can take the hit and then switch out, or just so you're just slow. Because if your whole team is super fast, then people are just going to bring Trick Room against you, and you're just not going to be able to deal with it, because they're just going to bring Trick Room. Like this team right here, if it wasn't for me drafting a lot of slower mons, I would have expected people to bring Trick Room against me, because I have Deoxys and Mega Manectric, which is just insane. Like speed-wise, teams aren't going to be able to handle that, so bringing Trick Room is a way to beat that. And the way you counter Trick Room is, 1, either have your own Trick Room setter, or 2, just have slow mons that can abuse the Trick Room. Like what I mean by speed tiers. So speed tiers is like your fastest mon to your lowest mon. What are the steps in between? So here, my speed tiers were kind of okay, but there was a big gap. So Zeraora is 143, which is great because he's one of the fastest mons in the game. Like I think he's like top 15, top 10 fastest mons in Pokemon. But then my next fastest was Tornadus at 111, which isn't the end of the world. Like, those are still 2 pretty fast mons, but the gap between them leaves a lot of space. If there's like a base 130 mon, if they can afford to go like a Modest or an Adamant Nature that game, because they're not going to outspeed Zeraora even if they go Timid or Jolly. And even if they go Timid or Jolly, and they don't need to go Timid or Jolly to outspeed Tornadus because he's so much lower than the 130, So by having good speed tiers, it forces natures and EV investments that people wouldn't otherwise do because you have that speed tier covered. Now, speed tiers, the best way to think about it is 10 points. So like if you have like a 140, maybe it looks like a 130, 125, 120. Every 10, if you cover every like 10 to 20 points in speed, it's pretty good. Obviously, if you get something like Deoxys or Zeraora, it's going to be hard to cover because, again, once you get anything above 130, it's going to be pretty uncontested speed-wise. So, figuring out, I would say 130 is like the limit. Anything over that, like if you draft Deoxys at 180 and then you draft the Mega Manetric at 135, yes, it's a big gap, but there's nothing even remotely close to Deoxys, so it doesn't matter. But I guess let me go to a bit of a slower team here. This team. I mean, I just said Deoxys, but like if we take Deoxys out of the equation, because again he's fast and everything, Manetric is 135. My next fastest, you try to be around like 120, maybe 115. Ogerpon at 110. Maybe not the best speed tier, but the step is still there. We're like going 130, 110. Then we're going down to Ments at 100. So we go 110, 100. Then we go down to 85. Then 76. Then 50. Then 29, then 40. Like we make our steps down, and it's important because again, it forces natures, it forces EV investments that people wouldn't normally do against your team. This is a good team for speed tiers. So we're at 123. Then we go down to 119. Then we go down to 108 or 109. What are you? 106. My fault. Then we go down to 108. Okay, I only do this in order. So we go from 123 to 119 to 108 to 106 to 95 to 86 to 85 to like 20 to 30 to 50. So like this team had good speed tiers because they all cover each other pretty well, and as I go down, it's like a good gap in between each. Again, I said speed tiers is like the most important thing because it kind of is. But traditionally, how you want to look at it is like every 10 points is like a tier. So like 130 is a tier, the 120s is a tier, the 110s is a tier, the 100s is a tier. Base 100 is like base 100 speed is considered like fast. Anything faster than 100 is fast. Anything lower is slow. That's the best way to think about it. Gen 9, I would say anything like 110 and up is fast. Anything lower is slow. But traditionally speaking, outside of Gen 9, because Gen 9 is kind of an anomaly, and the power creep kind of crazy, so maybe 110 is the new 100, but, you know, 100 up, fast, anything lower than 100, slow. I guess I would say 100, I would say like 100 up is fast. I would say like 100 to 115 is fast. 115 to 130 is quick. Then 130 up is just nuclear level speeds. And then I would say 100 to 85 is like mid. 85 to 75 is slow. Anything lower than 75, you're useless. But yeah, that's kind of how speed tiers work. Yeah. I feel like I've hit everything. So, we're going to end this now. Again, if there's anything that you guys want me explaining more, DM me. I think I've hit everything. Cores, hazards, ground, ghost, electric, water, poison, speed tiers, clerics, utility moves to look for, priority, pivoting, type synergy, roll compression. If there's anything else you guys want me to hit on, again, just let me know. You're looking to make, again, like one of these videos every week, like an hour-long discussion, teach, cook session. Again, if there's other things you guys want me to talk about more in depth, I guess I could make a separate video of that in between the weeks. But for that, this is gonna be my team building and roles thing for this video. Again, further explanations, just let me know. But this is gonna be the video. Next week, we're gonna get more into prepping and counter teaming. So, just anything you guys want me to hit on specifically there, let me know. Other than that, that's all I got. That's all I fucking got.